for both adults and children, especially. And we, we have lots of different crises that confronts us, of which the global biodiversity crisis is one of them. Apart from climate change, the water crisis, inequality, many things, peace, lack of peace and harmony. So the global biodiversity crisis is what I will be dwelling upon. And we always look at cities as places where nature is in retreat. And we have to change that paradigm, because even though cities and urbanizing areas occupy a very small fraction of the landscape usually, in some places a little bit more, but they have widespread impacts elsewhere, and cities need to play their role in looking after biodiversity, and that can only come when we engage with biodiversity as a way of living and learning right from the beginning with the children and adults as well. So, and many Indian cities and towns are still blessed with a lot of biodiversity. So for example, Bengaluru has about 350 species of birds, between 12 to 15 species of bats. We still have leopards, tigers, and elephants on in the outskirts. And so are other cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Kolkata, Bhopal, Jaipur, all of them. They all have opportunities for both children and adults to engage and learn from nature, and also there's an opportunity for us to fashion living in the city in the coming decades, so that we can also make contributions as city dwellers to providing some space for nature to coexist with us. And I think that is going to be an important challenge for us. So just to show a schematic of how urbanization is a process, and you can see how rapidly it is happening. And so as far as biodiversity is concerned, cities have two types of impacts. One is the impacts that they have on places which are far away from cities through the dependence on resources. But there are also things that happen in and around cities themselves. And I'm going to talk about things that we could possibly do within the city, and Neha will make connections between learning and living in the city with processes and things which connect the city to the larger environment. This is just to show Bengaluru, and you can see the built-up area. And as the cities are expanding, this is going to become a bigger challenge for us to nurture and find space for nature to exist in the city. And this has to be done by citizens at large, actually. And schools and educational campuses, balconies, rooftops, every neighborhood garden, every bit of space and a way of thinking will have to contribute to fostering biodiversity in the city. It's not going to happen simply because of government regulations and so on. So just to show that as you have a lot of urbanization around, so Bengaluru is known for its gardens, but is also known as a city of lakes. And you can see we have lots of water bodies which used to traditionally be for irrigation. Some of them date back to several hundred years old. And now they are become a part of the city. The city has come around them, and we have to now find new ways for these aquatic systems to exist. Just to show that one lake, Henagra Lake, the tremendous changes that have happened between 1992 and 2022. So the catchment around the water bodies has changed drastically. The manner in which rainfall interacts with the land surface has changed because of the built-up area. Now, these are things that when you think about the opportunities for us to learn about environment, the city actually affords a lot of opportunities for children to learn directly from about hydrology, about ecology, about many other topics actually. And I think this is something that we haven't harnessed as much as we can. Again, just an example. I don't want to get into the details, but you can see that this is a tale of every water body in any city in India. You will find that the area around is going to be transformed in terms of amount of area under vegetation, built-up area, and so on. And so we need to think about, where do we draw the line, and how do we maintain these aquatic systems in the future. When we are living in an urban area, there are lots of areas which are not yet built up. So it sort of gives us a false sense of complacency. You'll find a lot of greens, you'll find a lot of even big trees next to in unused plots. And it's a very short-lived. So within a few years or a decade, you will suddenly find a big loss in the green cover, large trees, and all these unused plots being built over. And all of us who have lived in city neighborhoods would have, in Bengaluru or elsewhere, would have seen the rapid loss that happens almost overnight. So that is why urban biodiversity and urban ecology is often at a very precarious state. It is not something that is protected as an area set aside for nature to thrive, but you have to constantly find new ways of maintaining what we have and putting in place new opportunities for nature to coexist. So just to show that educational campuses, military campuses, cantonment areas, schools, they all contribute to the green cover that Bengaluru has. And whether it's a small school or a big school, or whether it's a big college or a small, all of these have tremendous opportunities to sustain native biodiversity. And there was a recent study done just a few months back. It was published by folks from the Wildlife Institute of India in Dehradun. When they looked at a bunch of school and college campuses across India, they found that about 50% of India's total number of bird species, which is about 1,350 species, are found in campuses. And so they will have to play an important role, and many of them are urban campuses. So these campuses will have to play an important role in the conservation of biodiversity and the contribution of urban areas to the global biodiversity crisis. So this is something that I think schools, teachers, all of us need to engage with. You can rapidly lose areas, so that's the challenge. And so we have to also then recreate new areas, new green spaces as and when opportunities arise. So a lot of, this is a private farm which used to exist in the city. It's no longer there. It's been converted into a commercial complex. So you will not find within like 6 months an area which had lots of different birds, including hornbills and paradise flycatchers, and would suddenly become an area which is very hostile for biodiversity. So which means that the urban biodiversity challenge is quite complex. And it is something that you have to constantly engage with in various ways. If entire areas, entire neighborhoods can become bereft of biodiversity in a very short amount of time. This is what it is now, and it's because the buildings have already come up. So you can see, the IHS campus. You can see the top left. That's where you're located right now. That's where you are. And you can see that the urban forest, you can see the trees. To the north of our campus, you would have seen the trees, some of the eucalyptus trees planted in that reserve forest. That's the Solikere Reserve Forest. And you can see that all the way to the Bannerghatta National Park, we have these urban parks and residential areas. Now, this area is going to get built over and transformed. But we have to ensure that there is a sustainable transformation of this landscape. And educational campuses, children, teachers, educators of all kinds can play a big role in ensuring that we have very creatively designed urban campuses, and we can also develop a sense of tolerance for urban wildlife. And this is another thing. I mean, most of us, when we have driven past a green space in Bengaluru or in Delhi or anywhere else, or past a lake, or if you're cycling past it or even walking past it, sometimes in the late afternoon or evening, you would get this waft of cool air that comes out. Now that's because of the transpiration that the trees are doing. And here is a map of Bengaluru showing the reduction in temperature, which is shown in blues, associated with the green and blue spaces that we have. So this is an easy way for us to tell ourselves and teachers and children that these green spaces, green and blue spaces, are going to be very important when the heat island effect and climate warming engulfs our city. Then we will really have a very important service provided by these spaces. And so it's not just about urban biodiversity, but even for our overall well-being in the city, these are important. Other thing is that urban areas actually have some components of biodiversity that are doing reasonably well. One group that doesn't do too badly in urban areas or urbanizing areas are bees. And as you know, there's a global pollinator crisis in agriculture. We have lost a lot of pollinators around the world, and India is also no exception. And lot of the fruits and vegetables that are important for nutrition in children and as adults are pollinated by bees and many other pollinators. So this is just an example, and that photograph on the right was taken on our campus. And this is a study done by my colleagues and friends in ATRI, which is another institution based in Bengaluru. And when they actually looked at the gradient from rural areas to urban areas, because of the heavy use of chemicals in rural areas, you actually had some bees which were not doing too well. And some of them are actually not doing too badly in the city. Because in the city, people are growing all sorts of flowers of various kinds throughout the year. We have imported a lot of species. Many of them provide nectar as well as host plants for many insects. And so some bees are actually benefiting from the type of greenery that people are maintaining in the city. And this is something that has been seen in Europe as well. Bees are, some bees are, of course, a little difficult to live in close proximity to, especially the Apis dorsata or the rock bee. People get really frightened when you have a large beehive right in front of your balcony or windows, and often they get destroyed by people in apartments, folks. They call specialists who come and take down the hives and so on. But there are lots of solitary bees, other bees, which are completely safe for city dwellers and children to live. And that coexistence with relatively harmless wildlife in the city is something that we have to teach and we have to explain. Not just to children, but to ourselves and to adults as well. So these are all now examples of biodiversity in the city. And as I said, biodiversity in the city is quite complex. So for example, you can have, this is a grey hornbill in Bengaluru, and sometimes they are living on exotic trees, right? Trees which don't belong to India but have been brought from elsewhere. Now, exotic trees are fine as long as they don't become invasive. So there are some species of trees that are exotic, and of course we want to promote native trees, but they are supporting native biodiversity as well. And we have to distinguish between exotic trees and invasive species, which is a problem, because invasive species proliferate, they displace native species, and they don't provide any habitat often for native biodiversity. So these are important concepts that are very easy. You step outside your school, you step out in the neighborhood, and you'll be seeing lots of exotic trees, you'll see native species, you'll see invasive species. So it's a very nice concept to explain to children as they're learning about the environment and biology and ecology. These are two species found in Bengaluru. On the left is the coppersmith barbet. On the right side is the white-cheeked barbet. Both are, so the coppersmith barbet actually has a much wider distribution across India and Southeast Asia and so on. The white-cheeked barbet on the right, top right, that is endemic to southern India. And that's the bird whose call can be heard throughout Bengaluru. One of the first few things you will hear when you wake up, and if you're alert, when you wake up and go outside, you will hear the call of the white-cheeked barbet. Both of them are cavity nesters. That means they require trees with cavities in them. So only trees of a certain age and a certain kind can provide that habitat. As adults, they feed on fruits. So they need fruit trees. So this is the distribution of these two species, this is across Bengaluru. So then one can find out what are the factors that determine the distribution. This is data that's available to children from eBird. Very easy, it's public, it's citizen science data, and you can plot a map like this using very simple tools in schools and colleges, and you can look at which part of the city or town that you're living in, where your school is located, what species are found. So this is something that was not possible some years back, but with the growth of technology, we now can have lots of things that children can benefit from. This is your purple-trumped sunbird, another species which is found in many gardens and homes across Bengaluru. This is nesting. Now, when birds are nesting, often what happens in many of the gardens which are manicured is that these nests are lost because of the regular practices of how gardens are maintained. Because gardens are often maintained not for multiple purposes like conserving biodiversity and all. They're maintained for certain notions of aesthetics and certain very linear ways of looking at vegetation forms and all, which is not compatible with keeping a nest intact through it just needs this nest to be intact for about 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks, and this bird, the chicks will be out. But even in that period, sometimes pruning is done and so on. So these are small things that we as citizens, as educators, and as people whose care a lot of children's growth of minds is there, we can foster these. So this is again the nest of the purple-trumped sunbird, something that many of you may have seen in your backyards or schools or gardens. These are two species of munias. On the left is the scaly-breasted munia, which I took near my place. And on the right is a tricolored munia. That photograph was taken on this campus. Both are seed eaters. And they need grasses and they need crops like ragi and millets and so on, jowar, to feed on. So this is another important thing, that it's not just about trees, but also about grasses. So you need to have a mix of grasses, shrubs, herbs, and trees if you really need to have biodiversity coexisting with us. And it's not that difficult to have that. Again, we would think that biodiversity may find it difficult to adapt to